I see a little less energy. Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah. So from playway to reading, but don't confuse. We are not moving anywhere else. Reading is also for fun. Reading is also, and this we are talking about pleasure reading here. So it's not academic reading. So we are continuing with this whole philosophy of how to make the child's life interesting in their early years, right? So that they carry on taking it forward the same way. So without much introduction here, we'll dive in straight into the topic. My role here would be to kind of facilitate the discussion, but I'll also kickstart it by saying that, in the previous presentation, yeah. So we would be talking about reading as a habit in general. How do we encourage parents to take the tips? And in the previous presentation, we spoke about choice in terms of what they could pick up. And I think that's very, very central to reading too, in terms of choice to be given to kids. And apart from that, I think we have practitioners here who can elaborate a little bit more on it. I would first like to go to Ms. Singh. You've been in Maharaja Savai Bhavani Singh School. You are the founder principal. You've been running a reading program for about 11 years. I think what would be interesting for all of us to know is that, how was the journey of this reading program over 11 years in terms of the transformation that it brought in, the alignment and realignment that you had to go through, and how do you take it forward, and how you've seen the parents' attitude change and your tips helping the parents.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, it's something which I would really like to talk about, reading, because I believe that I think it makes all the difference if children are reading or not reading. And so therefore, at the time of the inception of the school, I realized and I knew that because it was a new school, it was far from Jaipur, we had parents from different backgrounds, that reading would really play a crucial role in the success of the children, in the success of the school. And therefore, when we do our orientation with the parents, we have an orientation with pre-primary, primary, middle and senior school parents every year at the beginning of the session. I do the orientation myself, and I devote a large chunk of the time to the reading program that we are carrying on in our school. And today I would like to focus, because it's early years, I would like to focus on what we are doing in pre-primary and in primary school, and more how we've involved the parents. In pre-primary, we've asked the parents to help us with reading and also provide a lot of reading material in the house, because everybody knows that children, and all of us, I think, we learn through observation and imitation. So if the child sees a lot of reading material at home, the child would read, and also if the child sees the parents reading. Now, whenever we say that the parents have to read, immediately, at least in Jaipur, that's my experience, that the parents would end up saying, "Father, I'm too busy, I come home very late." And mothers would say, "Ma'am, time nahi milta hai," or I cannot read in English and I would like my child to read in English. And for them, we have certain tips which have really worked. So we tell the parents that reading, one, it has to be enjoyable. Secondly, you have to think of reading and take it beyond books initially. So to mothers, I say that, okay, you may not be able to read in English, or maybe you do not have time even for Hindi reading, but I'm sure all of you are making your grocery lists. You're making your shopping list. So can you read it out to the child, and can you ask the child to read your grocery list, or help the child, sit with the child and make your grocery list, because that will help the child to read. And secondly, all children are playing, like board games if they are playing, or they're having crossword puzzles. Lot of instructions are there in those board games. So I ask the parents, I ask the mothers especially, because they are more closely involved with the children, that please read out the instructions and ask the child to read the instructions. So even that is reading. And that is sometimes comes as a surprise to the parent, because they are, when they look at reading, they're looking only at books. So that has helped, to look at reading in a different way. And we've also created in our primary section, and it's been a huge success, and I would really like to share it here. We've created a specific time every day in the morning where everybody is reading. And we call it Dear Time. I'm sure many of you are aware of that concept. But we've done it very seriously, and what we've done is that I've asked even the bhaiyas and didis in school to read at that time. So 40 minutes, beginning of the school, even our bhaiyas and didis, some of them are reading newspapers. A lot of didis have asked us for Hindi books. I'm so happy that they're reading happily. And the school is, that primary section is absolutely silent. A lot of times somebody has entered the school and said that, you don't have children today. And no, it's the reading hour. So children have seen everybody, all the adults reading. So that has worked a lot. Then we have something which again, very doable and something very interesting for the children. We have paper faces of children on a soft board in each class. And if a child doesn't read that day, for whatever reason, that paper face, it's a smiley. And the teacher just turns it like this, that you have not read, so you're sleeping today. And none of the children, believe me, they want that sleeping figure. So end of the day, they'll come back to the teacher and say, I've read a little bit, I've read this book, I've read this story, please, I want to be upright. That's really worked, and it's fun and it's enjoyable. And for older children, we don't have a reading hour because of constraints of times, but we have activities created around reading, like we have treasure hunt, which we do for primary school children also. So again, they're reading the clues. For middle school children, a lot of our children have created graphic novels, cartoon strips based on the books they've read. So it's really worked, and parents have seen it. I invite parents very often to school to take storytelling sessions. And I see now a greater involvement, especially in primary school parents, because they've seen the value of this program. So there are a lot of parents who are now coming to school and they take the reading session, they either enact a story, then our teachers also enact stories, they take the book, then they prepare placards where they stop the story and there's something written on the placard which takes the story forward. So children read that. And then again the teacher enacts the story. So there are little things which have worked, and I have seen over, it's been 11 years now, and primary school especially, children are reading well, and because they are reading well, they are more settled in school, they are happier, and they're speaking well because their reading skills are quite strong now. So yeah, that's how I've done it in school.
Thank you, ma'am. And I think points that you're making, they're all practical, doable points, and I'm sure the audience can take forward these points in their respective schools. One of the major points that came out of your points was involvement. We always talk about that, we have to give tips to the parents and they have to do this and they have to do that. I think what came in very strongly was you made the parents involved in the process. And I think that makes a huge amount of difference. Thank you. With this, to the next panelist, Azit, you've been working in various different geographies. You've been in Middle East, Australia, and now India with the Heritage School. And while we were talking before the session, you said that you like to study the culturally relevant things and then see the practices and then align them all. I think that's a very, very important thought that you brought in. And I think everybody would benefit knowing from you how you're able to do that, and then how are we able to take it forward in all the other schools.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Congratulations on being here and being awake. I have about 4 minutes with you, so I'm going to accept this incredible challenge and see if I can make plant a tiny seed with the 4 minutes that I've got. When you're looking at a reform within a system, a state, or a structure, what I do like to do is to observe, watch, and begin with positive presuppositions, looking for the good. Doing that in the UAE 11 years ago, as one of the leaders of the large reform that they were doing, I actually sat in early years classrooms for 3 weeks as a child on a chair or on the floor to understand what it was like to experience their pedagogy. And from there then you're looking for the strengths and the challenges, and you try to look for the key levers that will make some change happen. So in India, I've been here only 1 year, and to bring to bear the knowledge that I have and the understanding that I have, to watch carefully and keep quiet, and then respectively try to identify the challenges and the strengths of the culture. And in particular, the question is reading. What I saw was this: you have the most incredible storytelling narrative culture that pervades your religion and your lives. And it's a dichotomy, really. That strength and the way people refer and give anecdotes related to story isn't as well represented in the way that parents interact with children at home in terms of story and reading. What I've observed are a lot of dormant readers, children who can read but don't. Parents who have the idea that reading is a word saying or letter sounding activity. Parents who value phonics over other aspects of reading. That's perfectly natural and normal. But if you want to make a change, and the question was tips for parents, it doesn't matter if you make a tip for parent that they should read to children. If their fundamental belief is that being the perfect parent, as the doctor said this morning, if your idea of being a perfect parent is to send them to tutoring for phonics, as I've observed children in kindergarten doing, then you're not going to convince them to do something else unless you are able to get them to have an aha moment about a different way of being a perfect parent in terms of reading. So I've got a couple of ideas about how you might get that aha moment to happen. 3 critical mind-changing strategies that might work. The first one is to explain and help them to understand that reading that works in terms of brain development, and you've heard an awful lot about that over the last couple of days, reading that does that, deep reading that does that, is about reading that makes a connection to a child and what they're thinking. And the only person who can do that well is the parent or a caregiver who knows that child. In that way, a parent is much more skilled and much more important than any teacher could ever be. So deep reading is about making a connection of what you read to what you think to what you feel then to how you act. That's number 1. Number 2 is helping parents to understand that there's a huge difference between spoken language and written language. So I've just got a small example that I want to put up on the screen for you. I'm going to use this. Has it been up there the whole time? Okay, well, you've already had a good look at it. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just made up something, and this is spoken language that I've written down. And you'll see how little vocabulary is involved because the people involved in this are together in the same place, which is what happens when you speak. Now that we've got it going, well, we can finally get started. No, go back, please. Can you go back, please? Okay. Can you bring them over here and put it in this one? I think it'll work. I've got a smaller one that would probably be faster. Let me go get it. It's such a beautiful day today. Glorious temperature. We're going to have an awesome time. Here you go. Thanks. They're warming up. Let's make some tea too. See how little vocabulary there is there? There are no words because the reader or the talker and the receiver are both in the same place talking about the same thing. That's what spoken language is like for a young child at home. Now look, I've turned that now into written language, so let's have a look at the difference. Next, please. Okay, now that we've got it going, we can finally get started, said Anku, stoking the fire intently. Thank you, I've only got 2 slides. Nisjant had found some eggs. Can you bring them over here and put them in this one? Asked Manat, pointing to a large black pot. I've got a smaller one that would probably work better. Let me get it, said Prerna as she rushed back towards the car. It's such a beautiful day, glorious temperature, said Anku. We're going to have an awesome time, said Manat, excitedly. Here you go, said Prerna, handing Manat a small battered saucepan. Thanks, replied Manat. They're warming up, noted Nisjant. Let's make some tea too. So as soon as spoken language becomes written language, the grammatical structure changes and becomes more complex, and the vocabulary becomes incredibly dense. So, showing parents the difference between spoken language and written language so that they understand that by reading to children, they start to hear what written language sounds like and start to understand how different that is from spoken language, and that they are the ones that will help the children to make that transition, so that once they get to school, they can start to use their phonetic skills and the other skills that teachers teach them to be able to unpack what that language actually means. And you need the same whether you're learning in your native language or in another language. You still have to hear what book language sounds like. The third thing, and I would suggest this is incredibly critical, is how you report to parents about reading success. If you only report phonics as a skill or that they've learned the alphabet, you're telling them that that is the only critical part. You should also be reporting that a child is able to make connections to their own lives, that the child has an opinion, that the child has a particular point of view, and that they're able to share that. So I think those three things, if you're trying to prepare parents and convince them that there's another way of being a perfect parent, might be helpful.
Thank you. I think this whole thing of spoken English and the written English is really an important aspect that we can share with the parents. Also, the word that you use, dormant readers, I really love that word, a dormant reader, because that also tells us that, you know, every child can be a reader. It's just that his or her interest has not been awakened, right? Now, over to Ms. Kapoor. Ms. Kapoor, you are a doctorate in psychology. You handle a lot of parents for counseling with kids around academic, behavioral, emotional issues. You've come across various such cases, and you were talking about that, you know, how it's reading disabilities and all those things have been tackled while the counseling is being done, and how important it is to be, figure these out and take it forward. I think your experience on this count would also be very helpful.
Good evening, everyone. In the field of counseling, I mean, when you sit with the parent, you have to have empathy. Like all parents these days, they all want to be they all want their children to be readers. Because when they see their friends' children having good reading abilities, they think, why shouldn't mine? And when I meet across such parents during PTM or special orientation days, my major focus is to see initially whether the child's phonic sounds are in place, recognition of vowels and consonants are there, the phonic sounds coming out of them are in place, the blends, the spelling rules, the magical E, the plurals, if they are in place, I mean children, they are able to read fluently. Even the dyslexics and autistic children can be trained to read. We have done this in our school with interventions. And for parents, I always advise them, storytelling is an art. It is a beautiful phenomenon, but reading out a story in the bedtime is wonderful. Because the child there observes you, imitates you. This book is an object which can be used. When we tell story, the book is missing there. And children, the platinum rule in child psychology, observation and imitation. And it follows there. Role modeling by the parents is too vital, too vital. To be very honest on this platform, all of the parents are not avid readers. They don't have that interest. Maybe their earlier environment did not create that interest, or the home environment and many other reasons. I honestly advise them to pretend to read. At least to, pretension that at least the child is observing you. Placing books in the living area, on the bedside, everywhere in the home. I really think the fragrance, the smell of the book is very contagious. And when you see a book rack in a house, you feel, yes, books are vital. And why can't we have it as a regular thing like bathing, eating, reading? Well, we should have fixed time. Even if you see that your child is not too inclined to read, let's discuss the current affairs, let's discuss the cartoons, the mythology, introducing all genres to the child. It should be like a buffet system for the child, not only fixating the child to morals only. Cartoons are a big source which actually help children to read, that creates interest. And I have seen with many parents with my clinical experience, even at the age of 5 months, parents using flashcards that actually, readers are not born. Reading is nurtured. They are nurtured into using flashcards. And as in the morning, Dr. Robert emphasized on the language development. Obviously, the language development and comprehension, they walk hand in hand. And once that is in place, reading automatically takes place. And to be very, very practical, I have seen children by the class of 4 or 5 grade, they're avid readers, they show great interest. But as they grow, since all developmental milestones these days have preponed, the puberty is pitching in early these days, and children, they might go indifferent towards reading. So I always tell parents not to panic, not to get anxious. Wait, relax, they might come back, and maybe you have another Virat Kohli at home, or Saina Nehwal, or some classical dancers. So explore other aptitudes also. Focusing on reading is good, but imposing it through harsh means, I have never suggested so. And believe me, it gives results. Thank you.
On that connection of sports, the great thing that I observed was that Mithali Raj, who's the captain of Indian cricket team in the test matches and one-day international, while she's waiting for her batting to come, she's sitting out there and reading. And like she was asked in one of the interviews, she says, it helps me keep calm and focus on my game as I go into that. So that's what reading does. So now over to you, Suzanne. You worked again in various different geographies, Nigeria, UK, Malaysia, and then Nehru World School in Ghaziabad. And you've been doing, you were talking about the reading programs that you've created, and that's been doing really well for you guys. How you've integrated parents in the program and what has been the process of that program, I think that would help the audience.
Thank you for that introduction, and good afternoon to you all. It's a real privilege to be here. Some of what I'd intended to say, can you hear me? Yes? Yes. Some of what I'd intended to say has already been said, but I'll try and build on that and leave you with some tips for parents to encourage reading. Louder.
They can't.
Can you hold it closer?
Probably hold it.
Okay.
Yeah, that.
Thank you. Thank you. You can hear me now, Mum? So I will share some of what we've been doing as a school to support our parents to encourage reading. And over the last 2 to 3 years, we've been working very closely with, you may know, of Dalbir Kaur at One Up in Delhi to support our program. And I believe that all of us as educators are committed in our schools to developing a love of reading and the capacity to read. And if we are truly going to be successful in that, then we must have our parents on side and work very closely with them to ensure that success. And I have one quotation which I love, that one of the greatest gifts that parents can give to their children is to read aloud with them. So with that in mind, and all the other things that we've heard over these last days about the importance of reading and the role that reading plays in the development of our children, for parents to understand that and the positive impact of reading aloud, is integral to the success of that. So, as Mum has already said, orientate your parents. Actually invite them in at particular grade levels. So, the KG parents come for a session, for example. The nursery parents would come for a session, and so on. where you would focus on modelling good read alouds. What does that mean? The how and the why of what we're doing, and actually model reading aloud for those parents so that they can see it in practice, they can ask questions. Because you're doing it at particular grade levels, it can be planned in such a way it's relevant for what the children are doing at that age level. It's building on the learning and the reading programme that's happening in the classroom, and the parents are able to reinforce that at home. So as we know, it will give that cosy time for the child and parent. Say to parents, 15 to 20 minutes every day. Please find time that's sacrosanct for that, whether it's you or your husband. It may be the one thing that the father will do with the children throughout the week, the one thing that they have particular time for with their children. It's so important. And of course, as we know, it's going to offer us a window on the world. So that will be really important to understand the social importance of that, look at events that we face in our own lives and problems and solutions to that. And why, of course, we're doing it, how we're doing it, we're going to set aside a time each day that's relaxed for that purpose. As the children grow older, you may want to check, did they like the book? Just engage in some simple questions to get them thinking and beginning to build those thinking skills in them as you're reading. We also think it's important to say to our parents that they should read the book that they're going to read aloud to their children, that they should read that themselves before they will read it with the children, so they understand the level that the book's at, whether it's something they themselves like and they believe that their children will like as well. Because we also say to our parents, if you're not interested, the child's not interested, it seems a poor choice, then change to something else. And if parents say to us, my child won't sit still, my child runs away, don't worry, it will take about 21 days to change a habit. So change your habits too and keep trying. If the child sees that you're interested in what you're reading, and keep reading and gesture, ask as you're reading with expression, the children will in time come, or the child will in time come and sit with you and enjoy that reading. And isn't it worth saying to our parents, persist, don't give up, show your child the resilience that they need. Because we know that reading aloud to our children will build the foundation for good reading in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I think the importance of read aloud, it can never be kind of enough. You know, it's such an important activity to build the habit of reading. Scholastic in India did the research called Kids and Family Reading Report, and I think what all the practitioners said is kind of the similar findings, and obviously it could not have been different, that the reading report generated, which said if you want your kids to become frequent readers, a few things that as parents you need to do is, one, read aloud to them, and read aloud to them from a young age. Be a reading role model, and give the choice of what the kids want to read to them. I think that's one point that is important for us to remember. We often want them to read what we feel is right for them. That's not true. I think important is that they read, and once they start reading, they'll find the books that they would love to read. I think that's enough said. We've got another 4-5 minutes available, and we wanted to see if we can open it for a couple of questions that might be in the audience. Before that, I'll just say one thing. Oh, we don't have time for questions. So I'll just end by saying that, don't make it a hardware-software situation. When your computer doesn't work, hardware guy says software is a problem, and software guy says hardware is a problem. So between school and parents, don't let the child suffer. It's equal onus with the school as with the parent. So please work cooperatively and jointly with parents to build readers. You cannot do in isolation, they cannot do in isolation, right? And teachers and principals are as big a role model, sometimes bigger than parents. So all the principals sitting here, just go back and look at your room. Does it have trophies or book? When kid comes to your room, do they see books or do they see trophies? I'll leave that.
Thank you so much, esteemed panel. We invite
you.
the National Committee of ECA to felicitate them. Coming up is a session, Provocation. Here is Mr. Francis Downey, Editorial Director of Engage Learning, to talk to us about science and the early childhood curriculum.